In this episode, we're going to spend time on the part of privacy management that quietly determines whether all your policies and processes actually work in real life: training and awareness. Most privacy failures are not caused by a villain doing something dramatic, but by normal people making normal mistakes while trying to do their jobs quickly. Someone attaches the wrong file, forwards a message to the wrong person, copies data into a spreadsheet for convenience, or uses a new tool without realizing it changes where data goes. A strong privacy training program is how you reduce those everyday errors without turning the organization into a place where people are afraid to touch data at all. The goal is not to make everyone a privacy lawyer, but to make privacy expectations feel like common sense habits that show up in daily work, even for contractors who may be temporary, remote, and outside your normal culture. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at CIPM in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Privacy training and awareness is the structured effort to teach people what personal data is, how the organization expects it to be handled, and what actions to take when something feels wrong or unclear. Training is the planned learning component, like onboarding modules and role-based sessions, while awareness is the ongoing reinforcement that keeps the lessons alive after the training is finished. This distinction matters because many beginners assume a single annual course is enough, yet people forget quickly when they do not practice, and new risks appear when products, vendors, and workflows change. A privacy program also needs training because it creates consistency, meaning different teams do not invent their own rules that conflict with each other. Contractors add urgency because they often get access to systems and data, but may not receive the same onboarding or coaching as employees. When you build training as an operational system, you reduce errors, strengthen trust, and create a culture where people know how to ask for help before they make a risky choice. The first step is defining what success looks like, because training that feels informative is not automatically training that changes behavior. A privacy program should aim for predictable actions at key moments, such as recognizing personal data, choosing minimum necessary sharing, using approved tools, and escalating concerns promptly. When someone is about to share a customer list internally, success looks like them pausing to ask whether everyone needs full identifiers or whether a de-identified view would work. When someone is working a support ticket, success looks like them verifying identity before discussing account details and avoiding copying sensitive data into free-form notes. When someone sees a suspicious message or an unexpected access request, success looks like them reporting it rather than ignoring it or trying to solve it quietly. A common beginner misunderstanding is thinking training is about memorizing rules, but the operational goal is building decision habits, and that requires training content designed around real situations people actually face. Audience design is where privacy training becomes more than a generic slideshow, because employees and contractors have different needs, different incentives, and different levels of context. Employees may have a stronger connection to company values and longer-term consequences, while contractors may be focused on completing a specific deliverable and moving on. Contractors may also be using their own equipment or working through different communication channels, which changes risk in practical ways. A mature program defines training requirements by access level and role rather than by employment status alone, meaning anyone who can touch personal data needs baseline training, and anyone who can change how systems collect or share data needs deeper training. Human resources, HR, often manages onboarding logistics, but privacy and security must define the content standards so the training matches real risk. The best programs also ensure contractors are not treated as an afterthought, because a single contractor mistake can expose the same data as an employee mistake, and the outside label does not reduce the impact on individuals. Content design should start with foundational concepts that help beginners make sense of everything else, because people cannot follow privacy expectations if they do not understand what counts as personal data and why it matters. Training should explain personal data as information that relates to an identifiable person, which can include obvious things like names and emails and less obvious things like account identifiers, device identifiers, and combinations of data that point to one individual. It should explain that privacy is about appropriate use and controlled sharing, not just about secrets, because many people mistakenly believe privacy only applies to sensitive or embarrassing information. It should also explain the idea of purpose, meaning data is collected for a reason and should not be reused casually for a different reason without review. When these foundations are understood, later lessons about retention, rights, and vendor sharing feel like natural extensions rather than arbitrary rules. This is also where you set a tone that privacy is a normal part of professional work, not a trap to catch people doing something wrong. After foundations, training needs to translate principles into everyday behaviors, because that is where awareness becomes real. People should learn what minimum necessary looks like in practice, such as sharing a summary instead of a full record, using aggregation when possible, and avoiding copying raw personal data into chat messages that are hard to control. People should learn safe communication habits, like double-checking recipients before sending attachments, avoiding personal devices for sensitive work unless approved, and not storing datasets in unapproved locations because it is convenient. Information technology, IT, often provides the approved tools and storage systems, but privacy training teaches why using those tools matters, not just that they exist. A common misunderstanding is that internal sharing is automatically safe, so training should clearly explain that internal access is still a disclosure, and it still requires purpose and control. When people understand that internal mishandling is a major source of incidents, they make better decisions even when nobody is watching. Role-based training is what turns a baseline program into a mature capability because different functions create different privacy risks. Customer-facing teams need practice recognizing rights requests and complaints, verifying identity, and using consistent communication patterns so they do not over-disclose or mislead. Engineering and product teams need training on privacy by design concepts, like limiting collection, making transparency usable at collection points, and understanding when a feature change triggers privacy review. Security teams need training on how privacy obligations shape incident response communications and evidence handling, because breach response is both a technical and a trust event. HR teams need training on confidentiality and sensitive employee data handling, because internal records often include details that require special care. Contractors who support any of these functions should receive the same role-based expectations as employees, because the work they perform is what drives risk, not the label on their contract. A strong privacy training program also teaches escalation pathways clearly, because one of the most dangerous patterns is silence when someone notices something odd. People should know where to ask questions, how to report suspected incidents, and what kind of information to include so the report is actionable. They should also know what not to do, such as trying to investigate a suspicious event alone or sending sensitive evidence to broad groups. Escalation training matters because privacy issues often start small, like a minor misconfiguration or a confusing notice mismatch, and early reporting can prevent harm from spreading. Beginners sometimes worry that reporting a concern will get them in trouble, so training should reinforce that raising questions is a sign of professionalism. Contractors especially may fear being removed from a project if they raise issues, so the program must communicate psychological safety and a clear, respectful process for handling reports. When escalation is normalized, the organization learns faster and incidents become less severe. Onboarding is the highest leverage moment for training because it sets default habits before people invent their own shortcuts. New employees and contractors should receive privacy training early, ideally before they receive broad access to systems that contain personal data. This training should not be a dense legal lecture, because people in their first days are overwhelmed, and if they tune out, the program loses momentum. Instead, onboarding should deliver clear basics, key do's and don'ts, and the most important escalation path, then follow with role-based modules once the person understands their actual work. Many organizations also benefit from just-in-time reminders during access provisioning, such as reinforcing confidentiality expectations when granting access to customer data or employee records. The key operational idea is that access and training should be linked, so the organization can demonstrate that people were trained before being trusted with certain types of data. That linkage also supports accountability because it reduces excuses and clarifies expectations. Annual refreshers are useful, but only if they are treated as reinforcement and updating, not as the main vehicle for learning. A privacy program should assume that the annual course is where people re-anchor on basics, learn about changes, and rehearse key decisions that prevent common mistakes. If the annual course is the only thing you do, people will treat it like a checkbox and forget the content quickly, especially if the content stays the same year after year. Better programs use smaller periodic reminders tied to real risks, like seasonal phishing awareness that includes privacy risks of credential loss, or reminders about secure sharing during major project cycles. These reminders are part of awareness, and they work because they meet people where they are instead of waiting for a calendar date. Contractors can be included by sending awareness messages through the same channels they use for work, so they receive the same reinforcement while they are engaged. The goal is to keep privacy in working memory without making it feel like constant nagging. Awareness campaigns should be designed like a communication product, meaning you choose a small number of key messages and repeat them in varied, practical forms. If you try to teach everything at once, people remember nothing, so it is better to focus on a few behaviors that reduce the most risk. For example, a campaign might emphasize verifying identity before discussing account details, using approved storage for data, and reporting misdirected emails immediately. Each message should include a simple why, because people follow rules more consistently when they understand the purpose, not just the instruction. Many beginners assume awareness is just posters and slogans, but a mature awareness approach uses real examples, near-miss stories, and small decision prompts that match daily work. It also avoids shame, because shame causes people to hide mistakes instead of reporting them, and hidden mistakes are what turn small issues into big breaches. When awareness feels supportive and practical, behavior changes become more durable. Training also needs to handle the reality of mistakes, because even strong programs cannot prevent every error, and people need to know what to do the moment they realize something went wrong. A classic example is sending an email to the wrong recipient with an attachment that includes personal data, which can happen to anyone in a busy day. The right response is not to panic and hope nobody notices, but to report it quickly so the organization can attempt recall, request deletion, assess exposure, and decide whether further steps are required. Training should emphasize that speed matters because time reduces options, and early reporting allows containment actions that may prevent harm. It should also explain that reporting is not the same as admitting wrongdoing in a punitive sense. It is an operational necessity for protecting individuals. Contractors must be included in this expectation, with a clear way to report issues even if they are not fully integrated into internal systems. When people know how to respond to mistakes, the organization becomes more resilient. Measurement is how you prove the program is real, and it is also how you discover whether training is changing behavior or merely completing modules. Completion rates matter, but they are only a starting point, because a program can have high completion and still have frequent incidents caused by confusion or poor habits. Better measures include knowledge checks that focus on decision-making, quality audits of how teams handle identity verification and sharing, and trends in near-miss reporting that indicate awareness is increasing. You can also monitor operational signals, like whether rights requests are recognized and routed correctly, or whether data exports follow approval processes. The idea is to measure what matters, which is consistent safe behavior, not just time spent in training. Measurement should be shared with leaders in a way that supports improvement rather than blame, because people will resist training if they think metrics are designed to punish. When measurement drives targeted coaching and process fixes, training becomes a living system rather than a yearly obligation. Training governance also requires content ownership and update discipline, because privacy expectations change as laws evolve, products evolve, and vendors evolve. Someone must own the training content lifecycle, including reviewing lessons for accuracy, updating scenarios to match current workflows, and retiring content that no longer reflects reality. Privacy and legal often own the standards and correctness, while operational teams provide current examples and feedback on where confusion is happening. Security may contribute emerging threat patterns that affect privacy, such as credential theft leading to account takeover and data exposure. IT may contribute tool changes that affect where data is stored and shared. Contractors should be considered in updates too, because changes in onboarding processes or platform access methods can create new training gaps. When training content is stale, people sense the disconnect, and the program loses credibility, so disciplined updates are not a luxury. They are part of maintaining trust. Finally, the program must be designed so that training and awareness connect to real controls and real accountability, because learning alone does not prevent risky behavior if the environment encourages shortcuts. If employees are trained not to store data in unapproved locations, but approved tools are slow or hard to use, people will take the path of least resistance. If contractors are trained to follow certain processes, but they do not have access to the official channels, they will invent workarounds. A mature program aligns training with operational design by ensuring approved tools are available, processes are practical, and leaders reinforce expectations through their own behavior. Accountability also means that repeated risky behavior is addressed, not ignored, because ignoring it teaches everyone that privacy is optional. At the same time, accountability should be fair and learning-focused, recognizing that many mistakes indicate a process design problem rather than a bad person. When training, tooling, and leadership reinforcement line up, privacy habits become the default. As you wrap this up, remember that privacy training and awareness is the bridge between what a program says and what an organization actually does, especially when employees and contractors are moving fast and juggling competing priorities. Training builds shared understanding of what personal data is, why purpose and minimum necessary matter, and how to respond when something feels off, while awareness keeps those lessons active through reinforcement tied to real work. Role-based learning ensures different functions, from product to HR to security to customer support, can apply privacy expectations in the situations they face most often. Clear escalation pathways and mistake response guidance turn anxiety into action and reduce the damage from inevitable human errors. Measurement and content governance keep the program honest, current, and focused on behavior rather than box checking. When these pieces are designed with discipline and empathy, privacy stops being a policy people forget and becomes a set of working habits that protect individuals and strengthen the organization every day.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.